So, you've heard of carnivore, but you're scared of what might happen? Today, I'll break it down for you step by step. Everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Meet the Truth podcast. I'm your host, Jason Barrett. I'm the carnivore pharmacist. And just in case you're wondering how I got to where I am, I invite you to listen to last week's episode, which was episode 1, where I do a deep dive on my story, not only where I come from, why I became a pharmacist, how I got sick and had to trust in modern medicine with multiple doctors and specialists up to and including the Mayo Clinic, and how I continued to get worse despite being very compliant with that plan until eventually it got to the point where I had multiple doctors tell me that I wouldn't be around much longer if something didn't give. That's when I finally got desperate enough to step outside my comfort zone and do things that I didn't believe in, do things that I thought maybe were sounded preposterous and crazy. The carnivore diet being one of those things. And two, it was just as mind-blowing to me as I'm sure it is for some of you guys listening. It was the most impactful thing that it was the best decision I've ever made. It absolutely gave my life back. It was root causal. It got to the source of my inflammation and started decreasing it, started reversing every symptom I have. And fast forward a year or two after that, I don't have a single specialist. I'm not on a single medication. I'm not even a baby aspirin for inflammation. It's that powerful, and I can't shut up about it. Just in case you want to check that out, go back and listen to episode 1. Anyway, back to episode 2. Let me break it down step by step. The truth is carnivore, it's not nearly as scary as people think it is. What's scary, let me tell you what's scary. That's staying sick, staying inflamed, and exhausted for the rest of your life. If you're someone who finds yourself debilitated with any chronic symptom that you don't want, just know that there's probably a solution, but you're going to have to, maybe it's a lifestyle thing, maybe it's a diet thing, maybe it's something else, but it's probably going to require some change because if the input stays the same, the output is unlikely to change. I'm going to walk you through exactly what to expect, not only the good, but the bad and the breakthroughs, because, sometimes in life things get worse before they get better, but as long as you know that they're going to get better, that gives you the mental fortitude. Just from knowing what to expect, it gives you that mental fortitude to power through the tough times so that you can get to that long-term goal of, in this case, vitality and great health. So let's just start with what I call the early days, the first couple of weeks. Okay, listen, just like with anything, if you do a very drastic change all of a sudden, they call it cold turkey, that's going to have the most pronounced version of side effects or, effects or whatever it may be. And so it is going to depend on where you are metabolically before. If you are someone who's eating heavy carbohydrate, processed foods and seed oils and sugar and all these different things, that's going to be much different than someone, let's say, maybe on keto or on a paleo diet or something where it's much more ketogenic in nature. And so it's going to be a lot quicker for your body to transition over to a carnivore, a high-fat, meat-based diet that is ketogenic in diet. Now, let me make a clear distinction. Carnivore is keto. It is ketogenic. Keto is not necessarily carnivore. Keto, unless it is carnivore, is not carnivore. But they're still primarily running on fat, so sometimes that can make the transition easier. But when you first start, you're going to have carb withdrawals. You're going to, when you're used to eating carbs and your brain's used to getting that dopamine spike, especially if it's sugary stuff, and your brain's used to getting that dopamine hit, it's very much a drug. It really is. And when you pull that away and your body's not getting that, you may feel cruddy for a few days. If you're someone who's on, it's just like with caffeine, that's another one. A lot of times when you pull caffeine away and you just rip the Band-Aid off cold turkey, all of a sudden you're going to get headaches, you're going to be fatigued, it's probably going to affect your mood, it's going to affect your sleep quality, all that. So just like with that, if you're going to do an abrupt switch straight to carnivore, expect the first couple of weeks to be kind of bumpy so that your body can adapt, and so anyway, you have a gut reset. You got to understand your microbiome is based on what you've been eating. Like no matter where you are on the planet or what you've been eating, your microbiome is going to reflect that because these bacteria that live in your gut are going to help you digest and they're going to consume this. Well, if you've, again, been on a very carb or fiber or sugar laden diet, those bacteria in your gut are going to reflect that. And all of a sudden, when they're not getting that, they're going to throw a fit. They're going to start releasing toxins. They're going to start dying. And when they do, more toxins are going to spill out, and your body's going to have to mop up and clean up that mess. So you're going to go through a little detox phase there. Don't confuse that with failure. It's not failure. It's just a detox. It's got to clean up that mess, and it will adjust, and the microbiome will rebalance. But for the first couple of weeks, expect it to be a little bit bumpy. Now, I will say, at the same time, when you're getting that gut reset, one of the biggest things that people notice that I hear a lot is that, especially if you're someone who has like gas or bloating regularly, is that just disappears. Like gas goes to zero, bloat goes away. Their tummy starts shrinking in, and digestion becomes, a little bit easier because they're removing problematic foods. Carnivore at its base is an elimination diet. You are eliminating a bunch of problematic things that are going through your gut and causing issues. And when those are removed, the bloating and the gas tend to get better. And there's probably going to be some digestion shifts as well. An energy dip, again, especially if you've been used to having carbs or sugar on a regular basis, it's not just, one day later, your body's not just going to become fat adapted and start burning fat as efficiently as it could for fuel. It will get very efficient. It does have that capability. But during the first couple of weeks, when your body's learning to burn fat instead of sugar, sometimes it's a little bit slower in that process, but that process very much is a part of who we are. And be glad, because let me just give you an example. Let's say you were stranded on a remote island somewhere and there was no food. There was plenty of water, but no food. What do you think your body's going to eat? What do you think it's going to survive on? If you got some fat storage, that's what it's going to dive into, and it's going to be very much ketogenic. It's going to break those fats down into triglycerides and fatty acids and ketones, for your fuel source. And it's a very efficient, very non-inflammatory, very non-insulin dependent form of energy expenditure. It's kind of like a gasoline versus a diesel engine, but when you switch over, it's very much, in my opinion, it's very much preferred because it's just flat and stable instead of having these spikes and these crashes after you eat a whole lot of carbs. But just like quitting caffeine, all of a sudden, I'm sure most people have, whether it's energy drinks or coffee, or it could just be pre-workout supplements that are laden with caffeine or caffeine tablets or whatever. If you rip the Band-Aid off that and you just try to go caffeine free, your body's going to throw a tantrum. You're going to be moody. You're going to have headaches. You're not going to feel that great. But know that you're doing this on purpose, and it's for your long-term health. It's not for tomorrow. It's for, long-term. There's a lot of long-term benefits. Now, beyond that, let's get to the next phase. I call it the adaptation phase. This is usually between weeks 2 and 6. The fat adaptation kicks in, and so energy starts to rise, and it steadies out. And like I said, it's just kind of flat and stable all day long. You don't get that 2 o'clock crash. You know how, we've all been here, where you're going along, and you've got plenty of good energy. You're at work. You go for your lunch break. You go get a meal. You come back after you eat, and 30 minutes after you get back, sometimes less than that, you can barely keep your eyes open. You're on the struggle bus. And especially if you're trying to get something done productively, think about that. You're at a disadvantage when your energy crashes midday because of this insulin surge and all the other cascading effects of that. You're not going to get that on carnivore. You're going to have just steady, flat energy all day long. You're going to get tired in the evening, your circadian rhythm, when it's time to go to bed. You'll be tired. You'll be able to sleep well, but you won't have the midday crashes that you don't want. That's one of the good things. The cravings. This was, in my case, one of the most powerful things. Cravings vanish. I used to crave, especially when I was eating sugar and carbs every day. Oh my goodness. I craved them so much, and I didn't learn the difference between hunger and cravings until I went carnivore. And let me just tell you, that is a very, very distinct and powerful difference, because let me just break it down like this. If I'm hungry, just hungry, and because I haven't eaten in a while, and number one, a ribeye is going to sound amazing. But number two, I'm going to be able to go, you know what? I'm going to eat within the next 30 minutes to an hour, but I'm going to finish what I'm doing first, especially if it's something important. I'm going to go ahead and just finish this out, and then I'll line up eating in the near future. Whereas cravings, cravings are different. I could be sitting on the couch watching Netflix or watching a football game. All of a sudden, a donut sounds good. Oh, pizza sounds good. Chick-fil-A sounds good. Whatever it may be. There's a million different things. And that craving is so strong. It's like 10 times or 100 times stronger than just a hunger cue, that you are willing to get up off the couch, pause the show, go out to your car, drive 5 miles across town, wait in line, and get that food to satisfy that craving. And you do get a massive dopamine hit. You do get all that, which is very much, like I said, it works very much like a drug, and it can become addictive. It can become habit forming. It can become something that not only do you do every day, you look forward to doing it. It might be the highlight. And so just be aware, if you're being led by cravings, you may not be as nearly as much in control as if you are leading with hunger, with proper nutrition. The inflammation, this is a huge one on carnivore. In fact, in my opinion, it is the most anti-inflammatory diet on the planet. And I only say that because I probably tried a few dozen. I tried everything. I tried vegan. I tried the autoimmune protocol. I tried the no starch. I tried the FODMAP. I tried paleo Mediterranean. I tried keto. I tried all these different diets. Some of them were just crazy, just to see if I could get some relief. And some of them did provide some relief. Nowhere near what carnivore gave me, but they did provide some. And so I knew, before I had even tried carnivore, I knew that there was some sort of a dietary component. I just didn't realize actually how severe it was in my case. But that inflammation, when it starts going down and you can feel it or you can see it, a lot of people, it's one of the biggest things that people notice is their skin. I've heard from thousands, now, because I've been following from carnivore groups online, and I'm a pharmacist, so I get to have these conversations quite regularly with people in general, is that they'll do carnivore for some reason. Maybe it's for joint pain, or maybe it's for weight loss, or maybe it's for, they hear about the mental clarity and energy and all that. Not for skin. They're not doing it for that. And all of a sudden, after they've been on it for a month, they're like, my skin is clearing up. Like, I've had this condition for I don't know how long. I just thought it would never go away. And it's clearing up, whether that be acne, whether that be rosacea, eczema, psoriasis. Oddly enough, one of the things that a lot of people notice is kind of a phenomenon, which I don't even know the science behind why this is, but a lot of people are way more resilient to the sun. They don't sunburn. Some say that they don't sunburn at all. Others just say it's not nearly what they would have expected it to be based on their past. They'll go out in the sun for 3 to 6 hours, whether they're on a vacation, on a cruise, or they take the kids to the zoo or whatever, and they'll expect, oh, I'm going to be a lobster. Oh my God, I'm just going to, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, I either didn't burn or I barely turned a little bit red, and it wasn't painful, and it didn't blister, and it didn't peel off and do all this crazy stuff. That's anecdotal. I've heard that from so many different people, though, that it's worth mentioning. As far as other inflammation, joints, a lot of people have joint pain, whether it be arthritis or whether it just be some sort of inflammation, anything that ends with the word itis at the end, bursitis and all these different itises. In my case, my diagnosis was ankylosing spondylitis. It's a chronic inflammatory autoimmune condition, very close cousin to rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis, which I also was told that I had. They gave me 3 different, and they said that we treat them all the same, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, those are some of the different labels that were thrown my way. But inflammation, that's the thing, and a lot of times if you're inflamed enough that it's causing massive swelling on a joint to where you're losing range of motion. In my case, my ankles used to just swell up almost the size of softballs, and they wouldn't bend because of all the pressure. And if I was forced to bend that joint that wouldn't give, it was extremely painful. It wasn't just painful me sitting there doing nothing. It wasn't just raw pain. But when I tried to use this joint that was now dysfunctional due to all the inflammation, pain is now also involved. And anytime pain and inflammation are running the show, you're not going to be having a good time. So for inflammation on any level, this is a very powerful diet. In the adaptation phase, sleep usually improves for many. Sleep, they'll notice that their circadian rhythm's kind of more stable because, again, they're not having all the insulin spikes, and the blood glucose is more stable. And so, it's easy for your body's various hormones to kind of level out, including melatonin and some other things that can affect your sleep. Now, one thing I will note is a lot of people will say on carnivore, it's the sleep quality that improves. Sometimes they'll go from needing 8 or 9 hours of sleep on a very carb-heavy diet to transition to carnivore. Now they're only sleeping 6 to 7 hours, so quantity shrinks, but quality increases so much that they feel better on 6 to 7 hours of sleep than they did on 8 or 9 when they weren't carnivore. Again, pretty unique phenomenon, but I've heard it so many times that I can't ignore it. And then, I mean, really, in this adaptation, this is where the magic starts to happen. This is when people start feeling human again. This is especially if you've been debilitated with any sort of chronic thing that you don't want. When you notice that it's gone, it is so liberating and so freeing, and you are so grateful to remember what it felt like to feel like a human. Maybe the last time you felt that was when you were a kid or a teenager or a young adult or whatever. But when you go without that for any, especially for an extended length of time like I did, well over a decade, oh my goodness, when you get a taste of that, ooh, it's so sweet. It is so sweet. You'll never forget that. On to the next phase. I call this the breakthrough. And this usually happens between 6 and 12 weeks on the diet, again, depending on where you were to begin with. But the brain fog, the mental clarity, the brain fog clears up. The mental clarity gets way more sharp. It's very noticeable, especially when you're comparing yourself to maybe the way you've been since you've been sick, since you've been debilitated and your inflammation has been off the charts. You've had brain fog, and maybe you didn't even know it. In my case, I didn't even know it until it was gone, and it probably took a good 12 weeks for me to get to that point. But once it was noticeable, it was noticeable. And let me tell you what, I didn't want to go back to being a zombie with brain fog. I didn't want that, you know? And so just in case you're one of these people that decided that you're going to do carnivore because you've talked to someone and they said, oh my God, for brain fog, and I've got all this mental clarity, and I'm more optimistic, and my mood is better, and all these things that are, you know, largely brain health, realize that it takes 6 to 12 weeks to get to that benefit. You can't just do it for 2 or 3 days. If you do it for 2 or 3 days, in fact, you're probably going to have the opposite, because you're going through that early shift and your energy levels are going to dip, and you may have a headache, and you may have, you know, who knows what all you're going to have. But the brain fog's not going to be gone, and that's one of those ones that you usually have to wait, 6 to 12 weeks to get there. But once you get there, let me tell you what, you will not forget what it's like to get that, to feel good again. Autoimmune flares, that was me. You know, my goodness, they reduce in the biggest way, mind-blowing. I couldn't believe how powerful it was at reducing inflammation, Those autoimmune flares, they calm down, and then it just gives you, you know, you just kind of have this secret weapon in your back pocket. Anytime that you get a flare, and you can probably point to a problematic food or something you did within the last 2 to 3 days that probably led to that, then you can get right back on that carnivore horse, and you've got the kryptonite against that disease, where at least you can grab the bull by the horns. And even if you still have inflammation to some degree, it's just reduced in such a powerful way that you feel so much better. So that's really good. Like I said, the skin clearing up is huge, especially for people who've been debilitated with a skin condition, especially if it's on your face. A lot of people, they feel it really hits their self-esteem and their confidence in a big way. And so it can be life-changing. Weight loss, obviously, there's a lot of people doing it for weight loss. That was never my goal with weight, was weight loss. I wanted to just feel good. I had been sick for so long that if you would have told me to stand on my head and drink vinegar through my nose 3 times a day, if that would have worked, I would have done it happily. Guys, and I just need to say this real quick. If it wouldn't have been carnivore that had helped me, I would still be sitting here telling you that whatever diet it was that helped me. But I tried dozens. And when I heard carnivore, I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. I mean, there's no fiber. I'm going to be constipated. It's got all this red meat that they say is so bad for you, and all this saturated fat that they say is so bad for you, and all these different myths that you hear, which kept me from even considering trying it until I got so sick and so uncomfortable that I was finally desperate enough to give it a 30-day try. And that would be what I would tell you guys. 30 days, give it a try. If it doesn't work, no harm done. At least you know it doesn't work. I'll touch on that real quick. Usually your mood improves. Think about it. If your inflammation's down and your skin's looking better and you're sleeping better and you're got more energy and brain fog is reduced and mental clarity and all, don't you think you're going to be feeling better? You feel good. Not only that, usually when you've been doing this for 1.5 to 3 months, your confidence builds. You realize, hey, I've been doing this for 6 to 12 weeks, and none of that bad stuff that I thought was going to happen actually happened. In fact, I'm feeling the best I've felt in years, maybe the best I've felt since I was a teenager. And so your confidence builds, and you go, you know what? I can do this. This is, wow, I can do. I didn't think I could, but now I do. And that'll really help you going forward, because once you have the confidence, you won't need to ask anybody else. Once you realize that you're in the driver's seat of your inflammation, of your, state of health and the way you feel, that gives you so much power. So just, keep that in mind. On my personal story, I in a unique position that, again, I'm a pharmacist. So I fully learned modern medicine the way it is. I fully thought that it was going to save my life. I would have argued adamantly with you against what I'm talking about right now had I not lived it myself, had I not been forced outside my comfort zone to a point of desperation that I was willing to try something that, even if I thought it was preposterous and crazy, I decided to give it a 30-day try. And again, it completely turned my life around. I can't shut up about it. That's my personal story. And that's why I'm sitting here doing this right now. So hopefully this is impactful to someone. So let's address a few myths versus reality. A lot of people say, well, how am I going to get all my vitamins and minerals that I get from all these plants and everything? Well, let me just tell you right now, let me address that head on. When you're talking about nutrient density, like a nutrient density profile per gram or ounce or whatever of any food group, meat and organs are going to have more than any other food on the planet. There's no plant in the whole produce section that could compare to the complete metabolic nutritional profile that you're going to find in meat. And so it does give you so many different things. And it also is giving you really good proteins and really good fats. And it happens to be in the form that you're made of. You're made of red meat. You have fat. And so when you eat this stuff, your body, not only is it bioavailable, when it is absorbed in your body, it's already bioactive. It doesn't have to be metabolized from a plant version of protein into a usable form for your body. It's already ready to go. Things like iron, they're already in the form of heme iron. That's what your body's using iron for anyway. If you're trying to get it from another source, not only is it very hard to absorb, but then your body has to convert it and do all this crazy stuff to even make it usable, and it's largely wasted. And that's why it's really hard for some people if they're trying to raise their iron levels. It can be difficult. That's just one thing. But there, like I said, and eggs, look at the nutrient profile on that. Just go look at that. Constipation. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be constipated. There's no fiber. That was me. I was convinced, this is going to suck. I'm going to be so constipated. Let me tell you, I've been on carnivore now for almost 6 years, and not one time have I ever been constipated, nor has anybody I've talked to. Now, the one exception is if you go eat 5 pounds of cheese, I don't care if you're on carnivore or not. If you eat that much cheese and that's it, okay, yeah, that can be constipating, but again, that doesn't even matter. Even if you weren't carnivore and you did that, you're still going to get that. But when you're just eating like I said, a high-fat meat carnivore diet, it is not, I never experienced that. In fact, in the first 30 days or so, you may have the opposite problem because, again, you're having that microbiome shift. Your body's having to adjust. And whenever that's happening, sometimes extra water gets drawn into the colon because there's toxins or there's dead bacteria or whatever's. It's flushing all that out. And you may actually have loose stools for the first few weeks. It'll stabilize back out and normalize back, but let me point something out. When you go over to a carnivore diet, especially if you're someone who's used to, having a lot of fiber and a lot of carbs and a lot of processed stuff and just a lot of garbage, essentially, the frequency is going to change. But don't confuse frequency with constipation. Think about it like this. Like, let's say we had a trash can, okay? And you got 2 scenarios. In one scenario, you're throwing 2-3 pieces of trash in there, a few times a day. And in scenario 2, you're dumping a whole tote of trash in there 3 times a day regularly. How often are you going to have to change the trash on those? Clearly the one you're dumping a whole tote of stuff in there 3 times a day. It's the same concept when you're talking about the carnivore diet, because when you eat carnivore, 95 to 98% of every part of that is usable. It's not wasteful. So when it goes through, your body's going to absorb most of it. There's going to be very little left in the GI tract. So your frequency is going to go down because you're not filling the trash can as quickly as you were. That's what poop is. It's waste. It's trash. Your body doesn't want it. That's why it's passing it out. Whereas, whenever you're eating, like I said, the heavy carbs, it's going to be filling up on a regular basis. So don't get confused. Not only that, the volume The volume is going to be reduced on carnivore as well for the exact same reason. So not only are you going to go less frequently, but when you go, it's going to be lower volume. Don't confuse that with constipation. If it's not painful and it's not hard to go when you do go, then you're not constipated. You're just going less frequently and there's a smaller amount of stool. I wanted to address that because that is a common misconception that a lot of people will get thrown off on and don't. If it's not painful and hard to go whenever you're going, you're not constipated. It's a big one. The cholesterol fear. This is an outdated myth. Cholesterol, it's not the real enemy. The real enemy is inflammation. If you're in a highly inflamed state to the point where now you're having atherosclerosis, inflammation of your blood vessels, that's where it can become a problem because it can start to form plaques and everything. But let me just break it down for you. Think about cholesterol. Go look at a chicken egg. Go look at the yolk of a chicken egg. Look up how much cholesterol is in there. It's a lot. It is. And ask you, that an egg is the essence of life. That is going to turn into a baby chick. That's going to, why would it be there? If it were so bad, why would it be there? It wouldn't. Okay? Not only that, when a newborn human infant is born, they have more than 1 trillion particles of LDL floating around in their body. If LDL was the problem, they'd have a stroke the day they were born. They'd be having cardiac events the day they were born, and that's not happening. So clearly, you got to look further than that. And like I said, inflammation is the real enemy here. If you're highly inflamed, that is going to feed every disease state that we know of. Everything. So inflammation is what we're really after here. Like I said, now let's break it down. I just want to take a minute to talk about your 3 macronutrients, which are going to be proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And let's just start from the top and ask the question, which of these are essential? First, let's define what does essential mean. Essential, when it comes to food terms or nutrition terms, it means your body is unable to make it on its own, which means you have to get it from an outside source. And so when we're talking about proteins, or in this case, amino acids, there are 9 essential amino acids that your body has to get from an outside source. Now, from those, it can twist those and metabolize them and make other amino acids, but there are 9 essential ones, and every single one of those is in meat. Okay. When it comes to fats, there are 2 essential fatty acids. That's omega-3 and omega-6. Your body can, from those, make other fatty acids, but there's only 2 that are essential. And again, both of those are in meat, but they're essential regardless whether you're getting them from meat or not. So there's your essentials. Is there an essential carbohydrate? That's a big question. Is there an essential carbohydrate that you have to get from an outside source and your body is unable to synthesize on its own? The answer is no. There is not an essential carbohydrate on this planet. Your body has the ability to produce its own glucose on demand through a process known as gluconeogenesis. Not only will it do it, it'll do it with precision. It will give you the exact amount that your body is demanding at the time. If you're doing a rigorous sports versus taking a nap on the couch, if you're watching a scary movie versus studying for an exam, if you're having a conversation versus sitting in church, whatever it may be, you got different metabolic demands, and you need to be able to fluctuate, to ramp up or ramp down that glucose, and your liver is very well suited to do that, and it won't just overproduce it where you get this huge glucose spike and now it needs to dump a bunch of insulin to get it back in line. It's pretty good, at doing that on its own. And again, that's in the complete absence of carbohydrates from an outside source. You could go on a completely ketogenic diet where you didn't get a single carb for your entire life and your body would function just fine. So I just wanted to address that real quick. That's just human biology, by the way. So again, I'm just going to come back to this. Guys, if you're thinking about giving it a try, give it 30 days at a minimum. Give it at least 30 days. You have nothing to lose. If there's any sort of problem that you're dealing with that you want to see if it would help, do it. But know all these things that we talked about. Give it some time to actually work. If you only give it 2 days and you go, well, I tried that and it didn't work, that's like going to the gym for 2 days and going, well, I tried going to the gym for 2 days and I didn't have a 6-pack. Are you kidding me? Your body can only do so much so fast. In a lot of cases, it took people years or decades to decline in health to get to where they are. Do you really think it's just going to flip back out of it in 1 to 2 days? Or even 1 to 2 weeks? No. No, it's not. It needs time. It needs time to clean up that mess and detoxify and get adapted to a better fuel source and get rid of the inflammation. And I promise you, if you give your body a chance to do it, it's more powerful than any supplement or any medicine that you'll find on this planet. Your body is able to perform miraculous healing on its own. Let your body prove it, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, you are wiser now. You know that you did give it an honest try and then it did not work. So just some closing remarks, guys. Don't overthink it. Commit to 30 days. Watch what happens. I've seen lives change. Mine being front and foremost on that. It gave my life back, but I have seen it help thousands of others in such a profound way that, I can't shut up about it, and it could help yours too. If you do this, please share your story. Please let me know. Send me a DM or send me an email. You can find my email. It's going to be carnivrx, CARNIVRX @gmail.com, and I may share it on a future episode. If there's anybody out there that needs to hear this podcast episode, please share it. Please subscribe. Please invite others here. That's how we're going to help the most people. Until next time, guys, keep seeking the truth. Keep seeking health. Keep eating meat. And let me just end on this one thing that I realized after all my adventures. It's this: nothing tastes better than good health. All right. Till next time. Till next. Good.